Hey, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Huddle Up with Gus. I'm your host, 15-year NFL quarterback, Gus Frerotte. I want to thank you for joining us today. You can check us out at huddleupwithgus.com. You can go to wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. We will be on there. We're on every network, so we appreciate you. We want to thank all of our sponsors today, the Little Blue Pill, Credit Guard, Nutrigenics, 1631 Digital News, always a big plus. Go to 1631 Digital News, check out their sports news, information, entertainment. They do a great job with that. And definitely check out to where our podcast is held at Sounder FM. Go to sounder.fm and check out our podcast along with many, many others. And we appreciate you listening. And please go to our YouTube channel so you can watch the video, not just listen to the show, but now you can watch our shows on our great YouTube channel, Huddle Up with Gus. So I appreciate you listening. And get ready for the show. It's a great one.
Welcome to what surely will be a doozy of a matchup right here, sports fans. Whether your game is on the gridiron, at the diamond, or on the links, we can only say, get up off your seats and get ready for some real action. Welcome to this week's Huddle Up with Gus. 15-year NFL quarterback Gus Frerotte, passion for sports, has taken him on the field and behind the benches, playing for 7 NFL franchises with 114 TDs under his belt. Gus knows who the players are and how the games are won.
It's not every day you get to hang out with an NFL quarterback, huh?
Okay, sports fans, from the decked out and plush 1631 Digital Studios, it's kickoff time. So snap your chin straps on and get ready to huddle up with Gus.
So today's guest, I'm really excited. He's a national disc golf champion. He's written an incredible book. You should go check it out. Scott Stokely is joining me. His book is called Growing Up Disc Golf. Scott, how are you doing today?
I am doing fantastic. Thank you so much for having me. Nice to meet you.
It's nice to meet you too. So we've had all kind of people on our show, athletes from all different backgrounds. You're from Pasadena, California, correct?
I am.
Yeah. So tell me about how you fell in love with disc golf. Are you a true all around sports fan as well?
I did play other sports. I played baseball competitively for all through my teenage years. I bowled. I grew up in a bowling alley because of my parents. But the short of it is the world's first disc golf course was put into the ground in 1976 in Pasadena. And that was the year that my father passed away. And my mom, being a mom, would take me to all the local parks in the area. And some of them had, the best swing set. Some had a certain tree I liked to climb. One of them had a Frisbee golf course. Didn't think it was unusual or special. It was just a park activity. Didn't realize the historical significance. Well, I suppose nobody did then. But I just grew up playing. So luck of the draw, I was raised next to the world's first course when it was the only course in the world.
Yeah, that's amazing. You talk about bowling when we were young. My parents used to drop me off every Saturday morning at the bowling alley, Kings Lanes. And hey, here's $5. Have fun all day. That was basically their babysitter.
Yes. Yeah. Same year. Same.
Yeah. And I'm like, man, I just need 4 quarters to play Donkey Kong a little longer. That's it. But so that's amazing that the course, that's, where you grew up, where your mom was taking you was the first disc golf course. Now, what was I'm not so familiar all the companies and the brand names and everything, but I'm assuming if it's the first course, there probably weren't many disc golfs out there. The actual Frisbee that you use.
No, in fact, we called it Frisbee golf. It still can be called that today. Frisbee is just a brand name of Whammo, but Whammo was the flying disc manufacturer that everyone threw. So, just like calling aspirin, I think, and Kleenex are actually brand names, but they're generic now. That's what it was. So Whammo dominated the market up until the early 80s. And so it was Frisbee golf.
Yeah. It's just amazing. So how many holes, how similar is it to golf for you?
So here's the thing about disc golf is that it is golf. All the things that make golf, just the sport of golf itself, the greatest sport in the world. And the only reason I always say this is that I look objectively at not all, but many of the best athletes in all the other sports they golf in their off season and they golf in their retirement. It is the common sport that all other athletes share. So I tend to give the nod to the sport of golf as the sport. Disc golf is the same sport in every measurable way, certainly from the neck up, that golf is. You're outdoors, you're getting exercise, you're competing against your previous score, you're part of local clubs, you make one shot that keeps you playing for years. You're frustrated and kick your equipment, like it is everything that golf is, while being more affordable, more variety in terrain. And so I don't like to say better or worse, but there are advantages to disc golf without losing any of the things that make golf great.
Right. So in disc golf, do you have to wear like the crazy pants, like Rodney Dangerfield pants and the collar? Do you know what I mean? Like people go nuts sometimes, but I'm assuming disc golf is just whatever you want to put on that day.
Well, yeah. I mean, at the recreational level, for sure. At the casual level, you just show up to play your game. It's no different than a bowling alley or going out to the basketball court at the park.
Right.
But at the professional level, we have dress codes. We have, getting stricter all the time. Yeah. As the sport grows, I mean, there's now somewhere around 12,000 courses, 15 million players.
Wow.
We have media, we have sponsors, and the level of presentation on the pro tour is elevating with it. Some people like that, some people don't, but that's just the nature of, sponsors come first.
Oh yeah, definitely. Obviously. So one thing I wanted to talk about is like, where do, golf courses, obviously people have bought the property. They built these incredible courses. Disc golf, I would assume, can be put into parks because, right, you're not really excavating the land and doing all, you don't have to put the sprinklers in. And you know what I mean? Like you said, it's way more dollar friendly. But so where are some of the greatest courses that you have played?
So originally the courses were mostly put into public parks. And the reason they went into public parks was that was the only place you could potentially get exposure. You had to have this thing that you did that people in the park saw you do and think, that looks like fun, I want to try it. It was necessary.
Yeah. As
disc technology has improved, discs have gotten smaller, beveled edged. They're dangerous. The level of players are now throwing 80 plus miles an hour as well. It's not suitable for a lot of public parks, certainly multi-use areas. So it has moved away from that. But the thing about disc golf, and it's just the nature of a flying disc versus a ball, is that there are far more things you can do to manipulate the flight of a flying disc, meaning a wide open fairway, like on a ball golf course, would be considered typically fairly boring for disc golf because discs can go over trees and under trees and around trees and make S-turns. And so the worse the terrain for every other sport in the world, like the side of a mountain playing through the woods with cliff drop-offs. I don't mean dangerous cliff drop-offs, but you throw your shot over it, it goes 300 feet to the bottom of the valley. That's perfect disc golf terrain. You can't play any other sport up there. Well, I suppose there's probably some, but it's suited for us. So that's where the courses go into the ground. And the best courses are a lot of state parks probably 1,000 state parks have adopted disc golf in the most beautiful land available. And private courses are really taking off now too, pay-to-play private courses. It's the evolution.
Yeah. Do you think social media really helped with disc golf?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, social media helps with everything if you could ignore that 12% that where the harm is being caused. Yeah, I mean, it brings community together. Social media allows you to manage your club page. So every course, or at least town of courses, has club or multiple clubs. That's where you build your community. The biggest explosion has been on YouTube because now the sport is spectated. Videos of tournaments can get millions of views now. And that was impossible. Before YouTube, we had to just wait and hope that ESPN or CBS would pick us up. But we weren't big enough for that to happen. It was a catch-22. We couldn't get big without them, but we weren't going to Like they weren't looking to look at us. Social media allowed us to just say, well, we're going to bring out our own film crews, put it on the internet, and guess what? People are interested. And that's really been one of the big paradigm shifts.
So let's talk about like how it is now. It's really popular. My sons knew some guy that does trick shots and all this with disc golf. I can't remember what his name was. They just told me. What is it?
Simon Lazat.
Yeah. So, they know, like, people watch it. Like, it's interesting. It's great content. But let's go back to when you were kind of going to high school. You know what I mean? Like, how many people played and how many, like, did you get your friends to go out? How did all that happen? Because we didn't have social media then. We had a dial phone that hopefully somebody would answer.
No. So the early days of the sport, I lovingly say, was made up of misfits. And the reason I say that is that even though these were in my opinion, the greatest people I've ever known my entire life, you could not be part of the mainstream American culture and play Frisbee golf. Like, you're spending your afternoons in a park playing with toys as a 30-year-old adult.
Yeah.
That's just a little bit more unusual. And especially, we're the same age. You'll remember this. Nowadays, alternative sports, participation sports, they're very much embraced by adults who play. There's kickball leagues, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
When we were younger, there were a whole bunch of sports you played until you got out of high school. And then you were done unless you were playing one of these several major televised sports. I'm generalizing. Right. But the alternative sports weren't embraced back then. So if you were actually out there playing a game in a park, you were kind of weird.
Well, and it makes me think of the movie Dodgeball, right? When, have you seen the movie with Vince Vaughn? And
yeah, I'm familiar.
You know what I mean? And when he's opening the American Sports Quarterly, and it's like, it's going to be on ESPN 8, the Ocho, it's like, oh, we could play dodgeball as a sport and win money. Like, you know what I mean? Like this, I'm thinking back then it was kind of similar. I mean, obviously, people still played it though, because it kept going through all these years.
Yeah. So the sport basically grew steady for 40 something years. I do not believe there was a single dip in 40 years in terms of participation, Professional Disc Golf Association membership, courses going into the ground, whatever ways you could actually measure data. We grew steadily every year. And it was really just an algorithm. The sport is fun to play. A certain percentage of people who try it keep playing. A certain percentage of them introduce their friends. And more people continue to play because it's fun than quit because they move on to something else. And it was a recipe for growth, but there wasn't just, until YouTube, there really wasn't that explosion. And certainly in the last couple of years, that changed everything. It's an outdoor activity that people could go out and do relatively safely and affordably. And in the last couple of years, it's been insane.
Yeah, it's amazing to me. I actually have never played it. I mean, I've thrown Frisbee a bunch, right? Mm-hmm. Like you go out with your friends, you sit in the park getting ready for a concert or something, you're throwing just regular Frisbee. But I've actually never competed in disc golf. I think it would be a lot of fun. I am definitely going to have to try it. So what would be recommendations you would give to a beginner?
To a beginner, it's no different than playing, any other sport. Let's say tennis. When you're new, you cannot tell the difference between a $15 racket and a $300 racket. You don't need to invest the money. You don't need to buy the gear. You just go out and play. And when you play, if you decide that you like it, you will just organically find ways to spend more money to improve your gear. Because the better you get, you'll start to realize that the cheap equipment doesn't fly as well as you want it to at a higher level. And then it's like any other sport as well. It's completely addictive. There's so many similarities to golf. Here's one of them. 100% of golfers out there believe that the next driver is what's going to make them better at golf. And we know it's not the equipment, but you believe that it is. Well, it's no different than disc golf. It's like, I need that next disc that I just saw in the YouTube video. That's going to change everything. And next thing you know, you've got a garage full of them.
Or like me, you have a favorite club that you never want to get rid of. right? And you use it still because
exactly.
it's even though it's 10 years old and technology has passed you by, you still use it because you feel like it's your best. I can't hit anything else. I'm sure you have an old, Frisbee that from back in the day that you still like to throw.
So I specifically don't, because I won't throw any older equipment for the very reason that if I lose or damage it, I don't want to be connected to something that I can't just replace.
Right.
So I purposely avoid that, although I am the exception, not the rule. Most players have discs in their bags they've had for years that they know inside and out. They will literally cry if they lose. So to your point, that is very much normal.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining me on Huddle Up with Gus. I appreciate you coming and listening to the show. You can check us out at huddleupwithgus.com, wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. We are back. Thanks for listening. We are joined by Scott Stokely. He has an incredible book out, Growing Up Disc Golf. You got to check it out. I think, Scott, that do you feel like you were one of the originators to get into the sport, to try and develop it to where it is today?
So no, absolutely not. I was at best the second generation of players, because the first permanent course went into the ground in 1976. Well, 75, 76. But the sport had been competed for years before then, the sport of Frisbee.
Right.
With multiple different flying disc events. Frisbee golf was originally it was just one of the events that was competed at these tournaments, and they would set up temporary courses. They didn't even have the pole holes, which is our targets. They would put tape around light poles. They would create their own obstacles. I mean, the sport was literally being invented as it's being competed. And so there was an entire generation of players who came before then that were the real pioneers of the sport. I came along when the sport had been established, even if it was only for a very short period of time. And I was also a kid, so I wasn't even part of that culture, but I was there. So I'm part of it, kind of.
Right.
You only so much
you are, obviously you are. You're disc national champion, which is amazing to me. So we were talking before the show about, when you write a book, there's ups and downs and everything, and you don't really kind of understand everything unless you have some real moments in your life. So tell us a little bit about, when I was reading some of the excerpts from the book and thinking, there's some incredible moments that you went through to make you the person you are today. So explain a little bit of that to us, because I always think that's wonderful for an audience or even anybody listening to hear, because it can help them in so many ways.
Yeah. I mean, I was a punk kid. And
did you have the punk hairdo?
Yes, as a matter of fact.
Was it green or pink?
When I was younger, it was everything.
Oh, nice.
As much as I liked, Frisbee golf, I mean, it was the most important thing in my life. I also found that partying and using drugs and not so much drinking, but same thing, that became a very important part of my life. And I was also really angry. I was a very angry teenager for really no reason. Like, I looked back and said, is it because my dad died? Is it because my mom wasn't home a lot? And it's like, I couldn't really pinpoint what I was angry at. I was just a pissed off teenager.
Yeah.
Because I was. And I desperately wanted to be happy, had no clue how to do it. And so after several teenage years of struggling, I just started looking to the people in the sport that I admired the most and just said, they have what I want. What can I do to get it? And I found myself trying to hang around them. I'm not sure they were as happy about it as I was, because I wasn't like them. I was this punk drug-using kid. They weren't. They were responsible, successfuls. I mean, one of them was an engineer at NASA, the teachers. They were professionals, and but they didn't push me away. And I learned from them the skills to be happy. And then once that happened, not never, but I haven't looked back often.
Who would you say was your biggest mentor of that group?
Joe Racino, Jeff and Johnny Lissaman on the course, and Rick Schaefer, Dan Roddick, Mark Horn, T.D. Ugaldi, Susie Horn. There were another Cliff Town, a lot of people. But really it was, like they say, it takes a village. The entire Oak Grove Gophers Frisbee Golf Club was made up of an entire mixture of people. Everything from the very blue collar, beer drinking, chain smoking, all the way up to the NASA engineers. And everyone loved each other. I mean, we were all part of the same club. We all enjoyed the sport. And I took something from everybody. So I learned from the whole club. The club took care of me. They adopted me as a kid. And so all of them had something that I could learn from.
Right.
So it really was a village.
Yeah. And I was while you were talking about that, I was thinking in golf, anybody can go out and golf, right? Anybody can go out and throw a Frisbee, right? It doesn't matter if it's good. You have no idea if you're good, bad, whatever, right? You just go do it. But then you go take a lesson from a pro and they say, okay, fix your swing here. Your mechanics are a little off. Was there somebody that kind of taught you the real mechanics and how to throw a Frisbee better, the discs better than what you were doing when you were with that group? Was there somebody that just took you and said, hey, no, do it like this?
Yeah. I mean, Joe Racino was my biggest mentor as a kid, along with Jeff and Johnny Lissaman. They were a lot more about the psychology, and Joe was a lot more about the mechanics. And so I definitely learned from them. But over time, I evolved. I'm actually now, I consider myself the best teacher in the sport. I mean, that's how I make my living now, for the most part, is teaching. I do seminars. I do clinics. I just introduced a 6-month online course on playing. So I take the teaching part as serious as anything else. And my teaching has far evolved from the early days, because if it hadn't, I mean, sports evolve.
Yeah.
And so the things that I do, and I'm even in football, I mean, the way they train you today is different than when you were playing. You learn. And so, but I stood on the shoulders of giants because I had to learn from someone first.
Yeah. So, teaching, in your book, it talks about how you're really dedicated, you're humble about it. But I coached high school football. I coached my son's youth teams. It is difficult because not everybody understands. People take it in differently. People react differently to how you are. And so you have to try and figure yourself out to be a great teacher. So tell me about some of the learnings, the misgivings, and everything else that went into you to be one of the best teachers in disc golf today.
So one of the things that I find important for me is the understanding that what I do is important. I'm not just teaching people how to be better at disc golf. That sounds very fluffy.
Yeah.
There are billionaires out there that would give half of their fortune to go from shooting in the 90s to shooting in the 80s on the ball golf course. Golf is an important part of many people's lives, and how they perform absolutely affects their happiness. When I help players get better and they're not frustrated on the course, and they're able to perform better and make shots and reach holes they couldn't reach before, I have improved their quality of life. I've taken the thing that they enjoy, that they might have quit next year out of frustration, into something that they're now going to do for the next 30 years. Yeah. That includes teaching in a way where people aren't going to be getting injured. They have longevity. So the first thing is not to downplay what I do, but to recognize that it is important. It is a part of their life that gives happiness. And then I take it very serious. I am a student of the game. I study what works. I abandon what doesn't work. It took me decades to figure out how to teach properly, even though I was probably the best teacher in the game 20 years ago. When I look back at me 20 years ago, I think I didn't know anything back then. My method, I even called, I hate saying this, but I call it the Scott Stokely disc golf method. I hate talking about myself in the third person, but from a marketing perspective, it's what it has to be.
Right now. Yeah.
And so it's the Stokely method, but it is a method of teaching that is different than anyone else is doing, because I had 20 some odd years to fail, basically. Yeah. To learn, but also learn what didn't work. And then what I'm left with now is I feel so good about, I can make anybody throw correctly. I feel so confident. To me, it's exciting. I enjoy the look on players' faces when they just do something. They go, oh my God, I can't believe I just made that shot. It's cool.
Yeah, no, that is really cool. You know, the thing I'm thinking about is at least I like the Scott Stokely method. That's really good. I was thinking like, at least it's not the, you know, disc golf for dummies. Right. You know, it's like the people write those books and I'm like, really? Do we need to write those kind of books? The Scott Stokely method to me is the book I would want to get, or the program I'd want to watch to learn how to, you know, play this game.
See, in defense of disc golf for dummies, from a marketing perspective, we're talking about it on your podcast.
Yeah.
So it's a good name.
Well, I mean, there's whatever for dummies in everything we do. You know what I mean? I'm just saying, like, somebody took that to a whole nother level.
They did.
I was just kind of a little being facetious there, but I do like the name. I mean, that's what you should. I mean, if you're what you're doing, if you're the top of, you're the best teacher, you're the best athlete, whatever it is, you're the top. You have to promote and market yourself because you want to help other people, and you can't help other people if they don't know you're out there.
Yeah, I tell people this because, I mean, humility is such an admirable trait in human nature. But when you're an entrepreneur or self-employed, humility could kill you. It could kill your business. Yeah. So a player would say to me, like, I think I'm the best disc golf teacher in Peoria. But people don't know that. And I'm like, well, have you told them? Well, no, I wouldn't say that. You need to. You need to say, I'm the best teacher in your town. This is why you want to hire me. Like, you have to self-promote, even if it makes you cringe on a personal level. I tell people in my seminars all the time that I'm the most humble person you'll ever talk to out at dinner tonight. I'm not humble when I teach. When I teach, I say, I'm right. This is how it's done. If someone said otherwise, they're incorrect. I'm not humble when I teach. That's not an effective teaching method. I'm humble the rest of the time.
Right. No, I absolutely get that. Right. Between the white lines, what we say, you just become a different person. And I guess for you is you know,
you're putting on your game face.
Yeah, you're putting on your game face, right? Now, obviously, when I played football, every game I went out and played, I was nervous, right? Whether it was just because the team was really good, or I hate getting sacked and I don't want to get sacked 6 times this game, you know, whatever it was, like you get nervous, you get butterflies. Do you still get that way when you play competitively?
I don't. I'm like a fish in water. Like, this is where I belong. For example, I actually just made a putt that was the biggest cash putt I ever made. Just happened 2 weeks ago.
Wow.
And people asked me if I got nervous on the putt. And the answer is I was not nervous at all on the putt. I was just doing what I do. What's interesting, and I certainly didn't expect this, because this is the most media I've ever had on me since I played the sport, was just 2 weeks ago as well. Because during my time when I was on top, there was no media, or very little. And I wasn't nervous making the shot. I have had anxiety ever since then about missing the shot. Wow. And that has never happened before. I never expected that, but I just thought I've had trouble falling asleep because I'm laying there just going through the scenarios of what would have happened had I missed that shot.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know if that makes me weird, but the post anxiety was worse than the current anxiety. But when I'm on the course, that's my home. These are my friends. This is what I love. This is where I'm most comfortable. I like playing in front of galleries, in front of crowds. I mean, it's my happy place. It truly is.
Oh, if I could go back and play still, and put me in front of 75,000 in the middle of RFK Stadium in DC, that'd be my happy place, right? Like that's where you're comfortable.
Sure. Now I do want to add to this. I mean, I'm not a robot. On the course, I'm not nervous. I went back and joined the Pro Tour this year after a long absence. And I'm 52 years old, and the next oldest players out on the actual tour are in their early 40s. I'm an outlier of outliers. And I have had anxiety over, do I belong? Am I going to embarrass myself? What are people going to think? Is this a publicity stunt? By the way, none of that, no one thinks that if I'm successful, but what if I fail?
Right.
So I've had those anxieties, big picture. It's just not competition anxiety, but I've had life, and I do have life anxiety over those things. To go out on the pro tour, because I'm really big on social media, my story that I was going to tell was I'm going to bring all of my followers along on the pro tour with me.
Yeah, that's
I'm going to
wonderful.
bring them in behind the scenes, and I'm going to tell them about my successes, my failures, my fears, my excitement, wins, losses, but also training and off the course. Like, I'm just going to take you on tour with me. But that put, self-inflicted. I put myself under the microscope where then, oh boy, whatever happens, everyone's watching me, and it's my own damn fault if they are.
Well,
yeah, major anxiety.
Yeah, well, I look at that, Scott, like, you've played for so long. You teach it. You're humble. You say, it's like everybody else, you put your game face on. And there's wins and losses in everything we do in life, right? And when you accept all of it, whether you win, you lose gracefully, you give praise if you lose, you thank you if you win, all those kind of things. I know there's, when you're at your age, everyone is looking up to, yes, because you're like the new mentor. Who was that you said that showed you the techniques?
Like Joe Racino.
Yeah. So you're Joe Racino to you, right? To all these younger people out there now. And you're teaching them, and you're doing all these things, and you're showing that, guys, look, you can go and do this sport for a long, long time. Right. And it's so amazing what you're doing. So I would say to you, just keep doing it as long as you can, because for me, once it stopped, it stopped. There's no old man football game that I can go play in. So keep it, because I know that people watch you and they love to see what you're doing.
Yeah. And there's definitely a difference between like aerobic and anaerobic, or strength versus finesse sports. Like, you can't go back and play football or basketball at a professional level in your 50s. Sports, whether it be darts or billiards or bowling or golf, like the gap is smaller, although it's certainly still there. Like, you're athletically, there's a gap. It's just not as big.
Well, yeah, but like you said, millions of people are playing, millions of people are watching. For God's sakes, there's a cornhole tournament on ESPN you can watch. You know what I mean? Yeah. That was something that we just did for fun when we were out at the camp or something, before we went fishing or whatever. And now it's like people just want that little bit of competitiveness, to have some fun. And then all of a sudden it turns into something that can be really competitive and a lot of fun. And then it creates incredible people like you who are great teachers of that sport. So one of the things I wanted to ask you is my wife's a therapist. We talk about mental health a lot. You went through a lot when you were younger. You talked about, you were a punk kid and you had issues. You were angry. So tell me about when you grabbed your Frisbee disc golf and you stepped up on the course. How did that help you? How did that change your mindset? Because I feel like that was you talked about that being your outlet, but people don't understand that when you have this other side and you're angry and you don't know what's going on with you, but then you go and play a sport, you just absolutely change and it all kind of lets go.
So I went through both sides of that as a teenager, I'll explain both sides, which you've certainly experienced, because everybody psychs themselves up different ways. And when I was younger, I liked being the bad guy, in a sense. Like, I'm going to be cocky. I'm going to be arrogant. I'm going to beat you. If I lose, I'm going to throw a temper tantrum just so you know that I don't accept failure. And I embraced that role, but it was never really what made me happy. It's almost like I wanted attention, but didn't know how to get it the right way.
Yeah.
So I could at least be that guy. And I played with a chip on my shoulder, very much. And what I realized, pretty early on is that instead, I wanted the respect of a different type of people. The people I actually wanted respect from didn't respect the way I behaved. And then I set out to get their respect. And initially, I basically faked it. I'm never going to show anger on the course. Well, that doesn't mean I wasn't angry. or disappointed or frustrated, I'm going to fake it. I've come to realize that a lot of people who are professional and carry themselves professionally are faking it. But that's also part of being a professional. Like in a sport like golf, a gentleman's game, that is expected behavior. It doesn't mean you're not seething on the inside. I don't feel that way now, but I mean, there was a transition period where I really was pissed off, but you weren't going to see it. And I just said, I need to act in a way that's going to get the respect of the people around me. I'm going to shake hands with the people who won and congratulate them. I'm not going to make excuses. All the things that I thought they wouldn't respect, I wasn't going to do. But I settled into that role and realized that's actually right. That actually is how you're supposed to behave.
Right.
I figured that part out fairly early, I think. But it was a transition from the two different phases, But it was, it certainly became a lot happier that way.
Well, I mean, that's kind of part of it, right? That sports helps with so many people that a lot of kids are lost. Sports brings a lot into it, but sometimes it does give you anxiety, panic, right? That do I have to be good? All those kind of things that we've been talking about throughout the show. And I think in your life, what makes your book so interesting is that you've been through all this. You've been through on both sides, like you just talked about. You've been the ups and downs. And finally, you hit that equilibrium. When do you feel like, what age do you feel like you really just felt like, okay, I'm settled in. I understand who I am, and this is what I'm going to do?
Last week. Really. So basically, I played until I was about 30. I toured and competed. That was my entire life. My daughter was born when I was 30, and I quit playing for 13 years.
Wow.
And I completely dropped out of the sport. I completely left all of the people in the sport, which was my base, my foundation, my safety net, because just being around the sport hurt too much. Like it was hard to see people doing this thing that I wasn't now doing.
Yeah. And
the last period of those 13 years, I went right back to substance abuse again. This is about 8 years ago. So it's been a while, but I went right back into that, not right back into it, but eventually fell back into it. And I'm positive that wouldn't have happened had I stayed with my base, but I was just on my own.
Yeah.
And when I came out of that, the way I came out of it was I actually said, I got to get back on tour. I got to get back on the road playing disc golf because that is so I didn't really have a family. So this should be no different than a person who's struggling with substance abuse saying, I need to go back home to my small town in Kansas with my family and find that base again.
Right.
It's kind of what I did. But to me, that was going out on the road competing in disc golf tournaments. And I went out, and that's where I got the attention that I wanted, the things that made me feel good. I think one of the things that all professional athletes feel, and I don't want to speak for you, but I suspect you can relate to this, is you get addicted to, there's a lot of dopamine that flows when you're competing and you're playing sports. And when you leave the sport, you're kind of dependent on some things happening in your brain that you're no longer getting. And I think that's why a lot of athletes struggle after they're done playing their sports, because you lost your drug.
Yeah. Well, it's PTSD, as we call it, right? You think about anybody who's a professional athlete that's been in the military, you're just pre-wired to do this for so long. I did football for 25 years straight. When I was done, you lose the locker room, you lose the practice, you lose the meetings, the coaches, all these people that have been in your community, and then you're just gone. And you don't know so many guys don't know how to deal with that. And so I completely get what you're saying. And I'm so glad that you got to go back into something that you love to do and you found your community again.
Yeah, it was really great. Well, initially when I left, I didn't really feel as much of a loss because I got into the early days of internet businesses and was very successful very quickly. So I was able to substitute with having lots of money and buying stuff and doing cool things. Like I was doing well. But when the business started to fail, I realized I didn't have anything.
Yeah.
That, I'm not going to say I wasn't enjoying myself before then, but when things went downhill, I realized that foundation was no longer there. It was there. It was out on all the disc golf courses in the world. And so when I came back to the sport, that's what saved my life, is that I came back and the sport, like, it was shocking how quickly I was immediately embraced and just welcomed back. And it was amazing. And I'll never leave it again. But I needed to. When I left, I needed to leave. My daughter was born. I didn't want to be out traveling.
No, I completely get that. I get that. So with the first tournament you came back and played in, did you win, lose? What happened?
No, I did. Actually, no, I did. The first tournament I went back and played in, I actually won. But it was a very small local tournament. So it was, it was small. When I actually went out on the road, I'm sorry, it's hard to hear you because the air conditioning just turned on in the room, like the auto steady. I'm going to get it turned off. When I went back out on the road, I played for 9 months, competing every weekend without winning a single one, playing in the open division, which is against the best in the world, even though at the time I was like 44. And then finally I conceded that I needed to play in the 40 and older division. And as soon as I did that, I started winning every weekend. But it was hard to not compete against the best in the world. Like, I felt like I went to a martial arts tournament and I won the blue belt division, but there's black belts over there that could kick my butt.
Yeah.
It wasn't really as satisfying as I wanted it to be. But it was still more fun to win than to lose. So, yeah, no. Well,
that's kind of how everybody felt playing the Lions last year. We play the Lions, but there's these better teams we want to beat over here. So I get it. Hey, everyone. Welcome to Huddle Up with Gus. Appreciate you listening. Check me out at huddleupwithgus.com, wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. I'd like to thank all of our sponsors, 1631 Digital News Studio, the Little Blue Pill. You guys know what that is. Don't have to explain that. But if you need it, go take it. It'll help you. And Credit Guard and Nugenics. So thank you to all of our sponsors. We appreciate it. Scott, we were talking about, all the things that's gone on in your life. You've had a lot of ups, a lot of downs, and now you're kind of you look very stable. You look very good, like happy. And I feel like you're at a point in your life, like it takes all of us, all these ups and downs. I'm 50 now. I still try to figure things out and just doing certain things. How is it, that you came to tell this story through a book about your life? Like, was it somebody saying you need to do this, or did you just say, I got to write this story?
No. And what happened was, after I came back to the sport and I spent a number of years getting everything back, I came back to, finish out my last couple of years trying to be a better dad to my daughter. I was a very good dad for a number of years, and then I was a very poor dad for a few years because substance abuse and good parenting don't really go together.
No, yeah.
So I had to come back and rebuild that with her, which we're wonderful now, have been for years, but I had to earn it back. And so I got into, for the first time in my life, I had a job because I was an entrepreneur my whole life, but I started selling software and turned out I was really good at it. And I can make a lot of money selling software. But I lost my job in Fort Collins and in Colorado, which were where I was living. Right. And the only place I could get a software sales job that paid well was in Denver, which was an hour commute each way. And so I had an hour commute each way. I was like, well, that's 10 hours a week of dead time in my life. Like, I got to make some productive use of that time somehow. Like, I don't want to just listen to music or podcasts or documentaries. Like, I want to actually do something. And then I came up with the idea of finding an author. And what if I narrate my autobiography on my commute each day? And then they could transcribe that. And that's what we did. Aaron Rath, who actually I had co-written a couple books with before, but he decided that would sound like fun. And I just narrated my entire life up until when I quit disc golf. So there's actually more books in the works, but up until when I quit. And the interesting thing is I did that. And when I finally sent him the last audio tape, I thought, sweet, I'm done. Turns out there's about 18 months more work because there were 6 full rewrites. It was actually, that was the beginning, not the end.
Wow.
I was under the illusion I could just tell my story.
And that's it.
not the way it works.
Yeah, not at all. So you still got the disc golf on your...
Yeah, of course.
Oh, look at that.
Absolutely. By the way, so to go back to what we said before, because I kind of got a little sidetracked a little bit. You asked about finding the happiness now, or when if I finally found this peace and happiness, is that once my daughter went off to college and now I was just free to do whatever I want in life.
Yeah.
I got to really evaluate what makes me happy. And what makes me happy is I gave up every single possession I owned, gave it away or threw it away. I do not have a storage unit. I hit the road, and I am permanently going to be on the road. I will never have a living room. I will never have a yard, a mortgage. I am happiest when I'm traveling. And so I completely have abandoned any home base. And now I travel competing and teaching. But in between that, I'm just traveling and adventuring. My girlfriend of 2.5 years, who I met, had been doing this for 7 years before I met her. So she was a full-time nomad as well, raising her child on the road. And then when we met, it was like, I basically said, like, this is how I live my life. And she said, well, that's the only way I want to live mine. So I'm like, hey, this could work.
Yeah,
but no, we're permanent travelers now. And that is what makes us happy.
So what is the vehicle of choice to do that?
Oh, I just drive around in a pickup truck. Basically,
so you stay in hotels all the time? You don't have like an RV or anything?
No, hotels and Airbnbs. We will camp, but not out of necessity. We camp because we like to backpack and get in the backcountry.
Yeah.
No, it's one of those. I toured for years where it was sleeping on people's floors and rest areas, couch surfing, which was a blast. I mean, I recommend that everybody in their 20s should do something like that. But as you get older, I need space, my space.
Yeah, I know. So, I know how you feel.
Yeah. So we do all right. We're not struggling or anything. We do fine. So we're hotels are every night.
Yeah. To me, that would be, I have this yard I got to take care of. I got all this stuff. We have dog, you know what I mean? Like it is a lot of work to have your own home. And there's a side that a lot of people want to be kind of nomadic and be free and go out and do what they want to do. And I applaud you for that, because that's not an easy decision to make.
So here's what I figured out. And this is where by the way, I think you said you're 51.
Yeah.
Okay. It's great. Because once you hit 50, you can get on your soapbox and young people have to listen to you. That's the line.
Well, my kids don't listen to me, so I don't know.
I think the kids are exempt, but everyone else has to. The thing that I figured out, the absolute key to happiness is that you have to abandon preconceived ideas of how you're supposed to live your life, and then wipe them clean, start from scratch, and decide what type of life makes me happy. Because I believe that we're preconditioned to a certain path. Like, you're going to marry one person the rest of your life. You're going to have kids. You're going to have a career. You're going to hopefully have a home. And, you go from renting, but when you own a home, that's the greatest thing in the world. And I think that things like that is exactly what will make some people happy.
Yeah.
But we're kind of programmed that that's what makes everybody happy. And it's not. There are different types of relationship structures, many of them that aren't traditional. There are different careers. And so for me, it was like, I'm not happy in the same place every day. I am happiest if I don't know what I'm going to see tomorrow. That's how I have to live to be happy. And so I think the key is to somehow wipe your brain clean and just start from scratch. Does this make me happy? You know what? That thing that I was told would make me happy my whole life actually kind of doesn't. I think like kids are, a perfect example. Plenty of people are made to have kids. Like, that is their lot in life. It's what they've fantasized about.
Right.
The vast majority of people have kids without ever considering, is that the life I want as a parent? And they're not for everybody, but we don't know that. And by the way, I'm not all high and mighty. When I was younger, I did all the traditional things, or a lot of them anyways, as well, because I thought I was supposed to. I didn't figure out till I was like late 40s that I could just live my life completely different than anyone else I know and be successful. and be happy.
Yeah, well, that makes sense because, a lot of it is, hey, I have these beliefs and things and everybody should be like me. And I'm like, you can be whoever you want to be. I don't care. You know what I mean? Like if you want to go do that, go do that. Like it doesn't affect me. It doesn't do anything to me. And today's world is like, this is what I believe. And if you don't believe it, then we can't be friends. And I'm like, why? Why does that have to be like that?
Right.
Like if we're friends and you're a nomad, hey, that's awesome. Scott's going to come around every now and then, you know what I mean? Yeah. And check us out because he's going to stay here or they'll go there or whatever it is. And like, I think that's so great. And that story needs to be told more because there are preconceived kind of ideals that we all grow up with and live through, right? Like my parents did this for me, so I want to be better and go do this for my kids, or my family. And that my dad was one of 15 kids. And that was like, they all kind of believe the same thing. So that's awesome that you get to do that. So in all of your travels, you've been to a lot of different parks, national parks, I'm sure everywhere. If you could go to one place in our great country, where would it be?
Southern Utah.
Wow.
Southern Utah is the most beautiful part of the whole country for what I like. I like deserts.
Yeah.
There's 5 national parks.
They said the disc golf flies further in the desert. So
it can, especially if you're in the desert where there's like heavy winds. That helps.
Yeah.
And by helps, I mean it helps a lot.
Yeah.
No, the Southern Utah is everything from Arches to Canyonlands, Capitol Reef, Bryce, and Zion Canyon are all down there. The people of Southern Utah are just they're like being salt of the earth. Is that the expression?
Yeah.
Like they just got this great live and let live. Everybody's cool with everything. Like, but it's the beauty, the natural beauty is like nowhere else I've ever seen. That's if I had to be one place in the U.S., but I would not stay there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, exactly. But also, is that where you would go eat then? Like, is that your favorite place? Like, if you're thinking right now, I'm hungry, I could just go anywhere, all over the places you've been. Where is that food that comforts you that you love?
So we only eat local. We try to avoid chains. I like supporting local business, but also I want something that's different every time. Like the meal we went to a hot pot place in I have to remember what city. We're in Santa Cruz. We went to this hot pot place in Santa Cruz. This was awesome. But I like local hole in the wall places. They're not necessarily less expensive. Some of them they can be pricey, but they're local.
Yeah.
I like farm to table restaurants because then it's locally grown. I try to avoid being that like hipster guy that does it out of like ironically. I just want. Like, I don't want to eat the same thing every time. That's why I don't want to live in the same place. Like, I don't want to go to a chain restaurant because that meal is identical to the one I ordered every time.
Yeah.
So, when I was, up until this last year when I was training, I would eat ice cream every night. And people are like, well, you must eat a lot of different ice cream. I was like, well, no, it's always chocolate. But since it's local ice cream places, it's always different.
Yeah.
It's not Baskin Robbins chocolate every day. It was that local place.
Yeah, if you go to Cincinnati, go to Grader's. Grader's has great ice cream. I played for the Bengals 1 year, so they have really good ice cream. And then if you come to Pittsburgh, go to Glenn's. They have it's more of a custard than a ice cream.
So here's the thing about Cincinnati. I say I avoid chains like the plague. There are a couple exceptions. I love Skyline chili.
Oh, you do?
I know. I'm the only one. No, it's so awful, but it's just there's nothing like Skyline chili. So shout out to Skyline. Maybe the only chain I eat at. No, the only other chain I eat at actually is that. And people are gonna hate me for saying this, but the local owned steakhouses can cost twice as much for a piece of meat that tastes exactly the same and is 30% smaller. So
right.
I can do chain steakhouses just because that could get so expensive. But that's probably about it.
Yeah, no, I hear you there. There's certain places like if you know a chain is good and they have high quality stuff, then it's okay. Like when you're on the road and you need something quick, like you can go to a chain and get it. Like, you're not getting the worst of the worst. And there are better chains than others, obviously.
I won't go hungry to avoid eating out of chain. Right.
Yeah, I'm not refusing to not eat there because I'm starving. But before we get into kind of what you're doing otherwise, other than golf, but I want to go through like what it's like to go through a disc golf course, right? I don't know if you can see our chat here, but my team that are producing the show at Multiformat Network, they all said they would caddy for you. I don't know. Does disc golf have caddies?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
They do have caddies, but I travel with my caddy.
Oh, so she caddies for you.
Yeah. And I always tell the people that offer to caddy that my caddy comes with certain requirements that you might not be on board for. So like you're probably not the right candidate, I would suspect. But we do have caddies, and a lot of the pros use the caddies, but she's my happy spot. I mean, I feel just so comfortable with her. Like, one thing is we don't talk about golf at all when we play. We talk about everything but. And that's, to me, that is, with most sports, it is the less thinking you do, the better you are, because it's not the conscious processing part that allows you to do physical activities. It is a part, what we call muscle memory. It's not in the muscles, but what you call muscle memory comes from another place of the brain. And I believe if you shut off the thinking part, the more you shut off the thinking part, the more, the higher you can function. So I don't like thinking about the game as much as possible. There's exceptions. I mean, you got to speak it up.
I get it.
But for the most part, I want to think about other things.
So, like if you go play ball golf, as you call it, right? And you go to a brand new course that you've never been to before, right? And you get there and you're like, I don't know anything about this course. They give you a little book that has every hole and how far it is to sand and all that. But as you play it, if you played it 2 or 3 times, you know some shortcuts, you know where I should hit it, where I shouldn't. So is disc golf like that at all?
Yeah, it's exactly like that. Playing a course blind is challenging because your perspective on obstacles is only so good. And you also have a lot of shots that are blind. So you need to be able to get a feel for the distance and throw shots and get a feel. But you are correct. By the time you've played a course 3 times, you're probably about 90%. For a professional, like a high level player,
right.
After 3 times, you're probably 97% as good as you would be if you played it 100 times.
Yeah.
Like, local advantages at the highest level are very small because everybody's very highly skilled and you learn shots, but you have to learn them. And we have caddy books and we have all these different things, but also you're throwing shots and getting a gauge. I mean, you have out of bounds areas, which is what we can call them, like say sand traps or anything else. I mean, sometimes you got to just quote, hit the ball, make a clean shot. And if that clean shot lands in the trap, you realize I should be laying up short.
Yeah.
But until you've done it, it's you're at a disadvantage. So yeah, I mean, it's amazing. The parallels between ball golf and disc golf are, I mean, they are literally the same game, from the neck up. There are no differences. And even the physical skills are very similar. It's about it's about finesse and coordination and accuracy and timing as opposed to strength and endurance.
Oh, yeah. There are times where you say, can I swing really hard and still hit the ball straight? I'm sure, can I throw this as hard as I can and make it go where I want it to go? And when I'm close, do I have the touch, the feel to put it where I want it? It's no different than chipping or whatever.
Yeah.
But are there different discs that you can use while you play, or do you use the same one the whole game? Because, obviously you have a driver, a 5-iron, everything like that. So what is it?
You have a variety of discs. A typical touring professional player will carry 20-ish.
Really?
With them. Oh, yeah. Because they do have different flight characteristics. Some of them are we equate it as just like ball golf, except that it's not just that some fly shorter and farther. They do. but some turn right, some turn left, some turn fast right, fast left. Some have more glide, some, which means they carry longer when they run out of speed. Other ones will drop when they run out of speed. Both have advantages because you're going over things, under things, long shots, short shots. So you have a bag full of discs you'll throw. So now when you start playing, you can start playing with one.
Yeah.
You don't need a bag full, but you'll very quickly realize that it helps to have multiple.
So how do you name them? So when you watch golf, the guy goes, "Hey, give me my pitch and wedge." We're 140 yards out. All right. So now you go to your caddy and you say, "Okay, I need the one that turns left quick." Like what is that? Like, what is the terminology for that? Like, do you have?
Yeah. All the discs are named, so the discs that I carry are the Lutz, the Stahl, the Berg, the Assassin.
Oh, did you name them, or is that the name they came?
No, that's the company name.
Oh, okay. I didn't know. I mean, that's why I was wondering.
Yeah, every company has if a company manufactures 10 discs or 80 discs, every one of their discs has a name. Oh, so when you go out, you purchase a starter set would include a destroyer, a rock, and an AVR. Like the starter set you get at Walmart. I could be wrong, but I think that's what they start with. And those are just the names of the discs. And what it is, it's the mold. So discs are it's injection molding, plastic injection molding. So you basically have this big steel die. You melt the plastic, force the plastic into the die that's the shape of the disc.
Yeah.
The plastic cools, the die opens up, the disc pops out. Well, every single disc is its own unique mold. So that's how you can make the same disc over and over again. Every disc made from that mold, with slight variances, is going to fly the same way. So a destroyer mold can only make destroyers.
Wow, that's so interesting to me. I didn't know any of that. So now you have up to 20 different discs in your bag. Is that right?
Yeah, I don't believe there's a rule about carrying more, but there's just no reason to.
And are they heavy or are they light?
Yeah, they're heavier than the discs you would buy at a grocery store or a toy store.
Yeah.
There's a point of diminishing return. So heavier discs will penetrate the wind better or be less affected by the wind, which is an advantage. And heavier discs will fly farther because they penetrate the wind. But at a certain point, if they're any heavier, they will lose glide because they become too heavy. But we will throw a variety of weights. There's a range of weights from 160-something to 170-something grams that you're going to be throwing most of your discs.
So when you made the putt to win the money that you were just talking about a little bit ago, what did you, hey, give me this, what was the disc?
Well, it's my putt. So it would be the same. I mean, it's the same disc I putt with every time. It was the Marvel from Birdie Disc Golf Supply.
Yeah.
They'll be happy about this.
The Marvel, I love it.
The Marvel's the name of the disc, and the company's called Birdie Disc Golf Supply. They're fantastic. But it's just that's my putter of choice for a certain range, and then I use the Wizard from Gateway when I get outside of a certain distance because of a different flight characteristic.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
It's just like golf. I mean, you got to understand all your clubs, how far you hit them, what they can do for you, all that. And it's very similar. I love hearing about all this, and I definitely got to try it. One thing I did want to ask you about is, social media, and now with DraftKings, FanDuel, and prop betting and all this, is there a lot of betting or prop betting that goes on in disc golf?
No, but there will be. I mean, just as the sport gets bigger, it's going to happen. It's really just a matter of the market size. Is the market big enough to sustain these companies' interest in it? Because as big as disc golf is, if the betting on disc golf was 1% of the NFL, it would be massive. Yeah. But that's probably not going to happen tomorrow just because we are smaller. I really can't say that. There's 15 million players, so I suspect it would be more than 1%. But it's a question of, like, you just hit critical mass. When do they recognize you? It's no different than getting on, TV, getting on ESPN or CBS. How many people are going to watch? Last week, it wasn't enough. Next week, it's enough. We're growing so rapidly that it's kind of hard to ignore us. I mean, we've been on ESPN a bunch of times. I was on actually ESPN in 1998. I was playing on MTV in 1994.
Wow.
But it was very sporadic. But the one interesting thing about social media is that as great as it would be to be on these networks, traditionally, the world's changing. Like, if you were just a television show, if you weren't on one of the three major networks,
now it's all streaming.
You were dead in the water. Yeah. And then, then went to syndication. Okay. There's other options. And then but now it's like, it's great to be on CBS. It's not required.
Yeah.
It's great to be on the big screen in Hollywood. That's no longer required. So it's no different than our sport. So it's nice to be on these networks and we love the attention that we get, but it's no longer as required as it would have been 15 years ago. 20 years ago, if you're not on ESPN, there's no money. Now we have other options. It's a cool time.
Yeah. Well, we're going to see the Scott Stokely Twitch channel now.
Of course.
Right? Yeah. All game. Like, hey, you can follow me the whole way through. And, and it would be really interesting to watch. So before I let you go, scottstokely.net, tell us about that. And tell us any current foundations or charities you're with that our fans can help you with, or maybe go and see what you're doing. Yeah.
So I run an organization, and I put air quotes around organization because it's very loose, but it's called Blue Power. I have been teaching classes, disc golf classes for kids and adults with special needs all over the country for years. I've actually been to 283 cities teaching these classes.
Incredible.
And I also, right now, I donate my prize money on the Pro Tour. Like, all my prize money just goes straight to a local autism organization. So, like, technically I'm an amateur, but that's on the Pro Tour. When I did the money that I won a couple of weeks ago, a portion of it went, which was all the skins I wanted to skins match, but there was this pledge money that came in. I promised that I would, the person raising the pledge money gave me promise. He's like, you got to promise me if you win this, you're going to keep this. I'm like, fine, I promise. I didn't expect to win. But the skins money all got donated. I don't take donations. That's the thing. I'm not an organization. I don't like dealing with money. I don't want it to become a business. So if you are a supporter of what I do and the work I do in the autism community, support your local autism organization, school, or assisted living community. That the way you support me is just donate locally. Yeah, that's probably the biggest. Yeah, it's something I enjoy. It makes me really
buy your
happy.
book, right?
What?
And buy your book.
The only thing I would love to find is I need a hotel sponsor and a vehicle sponsor. Those are my two massive expenses traveling. So if Marriott is listening, we like right now we stay at all Holiday Inns, and we're like Diamond Elite members, whatever that means. But we stay at them like 150 or 200 nights a year, wind up at Holiday Inns. But I would love to find a hotel sponsor. So that would be the only shout out of something like for me, just for me.
That you would love to have. Right.
I would love to have. But aside from that, like as far as the special needs community, I don't take donations. Like I said, just donate locally, volunteer locally. There's nothing more fun than volunteering at a special needs school, and they will not turn you away. They need volunteers as much as they need money. So that's what I'm city to do.
Yeah, no, amazing. Well, Scott, it's been an amazing show. I learned, you never think as you get older, like, oh, okay, I've heard it all. Literally learned so much today from an incredible teacher, player. And where can I get the Scott Stokely disc or Frisbee?
So if you go to scottstokely.net, there's a store. I have merchandise with all my endorsed products. One of the ways I make my money is that I endorse a number of products. So there's a number of discs with my their tour series stamps, we call them, but they have my logo and hot stamp on them. You can buy those from scottstokely.net. And that is where you would be buying my merchandise.
Awesome. And one last question for you. If I'm a player, I'm on the tour, and I win a big event, what kind of earnings can I expect?
The big events right now are, and first prize might be between 10 and 30,000.
Wow, it's awesome.
Yeah, it's okay. I mean, compared to like certainly other sports, that's very small. But like there are a number of different sports with different models in them to make money. And so the players that are making money in the sport, myself included, it's not from prize money.
Yeah.
Like I remember a few years ago, the highest paid athlete in the world was Michael Phelps, and he never won $1 of prize money. So there are the players on tour are they're successful.
Yeah.
And by the way, if you're able to just do this for a living and eat and put gas in your tank and you're playing disc golf for a living, I consider that wildly successful.
Yeah. But basically you're in nature every day playing.
Yeah. But there's players that have signed $1 million contracts.
Oh,
a few of them. So there are $1 million contracts out there, and it's getting bigger. So like it's coming, but the actual, specifically the prize money is, I used to travel to tournaments in the 90s where first place in the tournament, if I won, first place was less than what my airline ticket cost. Wow. So I couldn't win back my airfare, and I was a professional disc golfer.
That would be rough.
Yeah, that was rough. That
would be rough.
I have no idea how easy they got it, but
yeah. Well, disc golf is definitely growing because of people like you and your passion and your pursuit of happiness with the sport and trying to share it with others all over the country. So, Scott, I appreciate you. Everyone can check him out at scottstokely.net. Go buy his book. Check out his gear. What is it? Birdies, right? That's the company you got over there.
Birdie Disc Golf Supply.
Birdie Disc Golf.
The Wizard. I also work with Dynamic Discs and Castoplast are the other two big companies I'm working with. And others haven't been announced, but they will be. So all four of those are very good to me. And a lot of what they do is the reason I'm able to do all this work in the special needs community is because companies like Dynamic, Castoplast, Birdie, and Gateway support my career in other ways. So they are actually supporting my special needs work, but they're doing it via me.
Right. That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, Scott, good luck with everything. Thanks you for sharing your story with us today on Huddle Up with Gus. That's our show today, folks. Check us out next show. We're going to have one of my old linemen on that play with me at the Bengals. Richmond Webb's going to join us for our next show. And you can also check out our YouTube channel, Huddle Up with Gus. That's it. I appreciate everyone coming on. Thanks to all our sponsors. Thanks to MFN. Thanks to Terry Schulman for always getting incredible guests. And we'll see you next week on Huddle Up with Gus.
And that's a wrap, sports fans. Thanks for joining in the fun at the 1631 Digital Studios for another action-packed Huddle Up with Gus, featuring 15-year NFL quarterback Gus Frerotte. Huddle Up with Gus is proudly produced by 1631 Digital Media and is available on Apple Music.